This week on Quadriga, the euro crisis, stress test for Angela Merkel's coalition. In Berlin, the German chancellor is fighting hard to save the euro. Her own coalition government is squabbling over the issue. The Free Democrats are demanding a policy shift. All this just days before the Bundestag votes on a crucial Eurozone rescue package. Meanwhile, weaker Eurozone member states are being subjected to further punishment. For Spain and Italy, the cost of borrowing continues to rise, and Europe's major banks are coming under pressure. Your host this week is Terry Martin.
Hello and welcome. Why is Germany's government so divided over the Eurozone rescue package? Will Chancellor Merkel have to rely on opposition support to get the bill through Parliament? And if so, could that spell the end of her government? And what impact is this debate in Germany having on the rest of Europe? Those are some of the questions we're talking about this week on Quadriga.
Joining Terry Martin in the studio, Friedrich Thelen is a veteran business and political journalist based in Berlin. Before starting his own consulting company, he was head of the Berlin Parliamentary Bureau of the German business weekly Wirtschaftswoche. Ulrike Hermann is the opinion page editor of the German daily Die Tageszeitung. Before taking up that position, she served as the paper's political correspondent and business editor. Ulrike Guérot is head of the Berlin office of the European Council on Foreign Relations. An expert on European integration issues, she has written extensively about Germany's role in Europe.
So, we're talking here about the European Financial Stability Facility, basically an enhancement to the European Eurozone Rescue Fund. Ulrike Hermann, this enhanced rescue fund that we're talking about here is extremely controversial within the German government. Can you explain to us briefly just why it is so controversial within the German government, given that Germany stands to benefit from the euro perhaps more than any other country in Europe?
Well, I think that everyone agrees within Germany that we do profit from the euro. But the problem is that this rescue fund would mean that Germany would have to guarantee for 211 billion euro. Now, many in the government, and especially among the population, think that this is really a huge sum. What one should really realize is that is just guarantees. It does not mean that Germany actually pays 211 billions. Up to now, we didn't pay anything for the whole rescue measures that were taken. But nonetheless, it might be happening that some of this money has to actually be paid. So within the population in Germany, about half of them are against this rescue package. Now, of course, politicians always tend to look at what their voters feel like. And especially the liberals have this idea that if they voice these anti-euro sentiments, that they then could somehow get more votes. So that's why basically there is a lot of tension within the government.
So Germany would definitely increase its exposure through this enhanced European rescue fund, raising its exposure to about 211 billion euros. Obviously, that's a lot of money. And there are some mechanisms in this enhanced fund that would allow the fund to buy bonds in the primary and secondary markets. Government debt, sovereign debt, would allow it to extend a sort of precautionary lines of credit to the various countries that are so cash-strapped right now. So, I mean, there are some teeth in this package that can make people be concerned about it. But as Ulrike Hermann pointed out, Friedrich, there is an element of politics here. We've got a coalition government in place in Germany, the Christian Democrats led by Chancellor Merkel. She supports the bill. But the Free Democrats, our junior coalition partner, have voiced some serious concerns about it. The head of that party now, Philipp Rössler, who is the economics minister, sits in the cabinet there with the Chancellor, heading the economics portfolio. He has expressed serious concerns about the prospect of Greece possibly defaulting on its debts. Is that just politics with the Free Democrats trying to preserve their political skin, or do they have serious policy concerns about this package?
Both. I think first it's a method to get more profile. I mean, they were down to 1.8% in a regional election in Berlin. I mean, this is an alarm signal. You couldn't have it more.
The Free Democrats are struggling for their political life.
And they found, I think something is unfair in the discussion. Free Democrats are not anti-Europe; they're anti-euro in this form.
That amounts to the same thing, but anyway.
Well, I mean, we could deal with that. I do think a party with Theodor Heuss and all the others, and from Walter Scheel to Hans-Dietrich Genscher, they have ever been in favor of Europe. And it's a little bit bipartisan, I would say, to make it now an anti-Europe. And we do not argue on party lines, I hope, here. I think there is also a concern in the population. And by the way, it is not only the liberals. One wing of the Christian Democrats, headed by their Prime Minister of Bavaria, to make it even more unbipartisan, my dear, they are objecting the Chancellor even more on that policy than the liberals. But true, they might have found a nail in the wall where to climb on, but on the other hand, they even reflect a lot of anxieties within the population,
sure.
and they say, well, what are they doing there? And do the Greeks now live on our expense account?
Sure. There's the question that we keep hearing again and again. We have not just about this bill, but going back already 2010, a lot of discussion about that too. Should financially stronger European states have to pick up the tab for heavily indebted countries who are not getting their spending in order? When the rest of Europe looks at Germany and sees the kind of debates that are being held here in Berlin, especially within the government, not just within Parliament, within the government itself, Chancellor Merkel's own government, Ulrike, Guérot, when the rest of Europe looks to Germany for leadership on this issue, what are they seeing?
Well, I think they have been saying for 18 months or so, too little, too late, and that was basically the main reproach that was held against the government of Merkel. And what I perceived over the last sort of 18 months that we are hanging around with this crisis is when they look on Germany also, they don't understand why Merkel takes such a long time to finally, with a bold measure, save this euro and get sort of radical action in place. And that comes from the fact that most of the European countries, there's really an asymmetry of perception here, or a perception gap, which is the other countries mainly look on Germany, see a very wealthy, flourishing country that exports to China, grows XXL and so on and so forth. And they all argue that Germany is largely benefiting from the euro and the single market, what it actually does. But in Germany, what is happening here is a sort of victim's role. We need to pay for the lazy Greeks, brackets, right? For the other countries, we need to have the burden of their debts now and so on and so forth. So I think we need to disentangle the two discussions, because really the two discussions are like in a perception gap. And this is dangerous because we are all benefiting from the euro. The southern periphery has been benefiting from low interest rates. Germany has been benefiting from exporting stuff. So I think we have been all guilty for allowing wrong structures and flaws of monetary union to happen in the first place. And now we should think together how we move out of this, instead of allowing a discussion as precisely in Germany, which is much about blame them, we did it all right.
Yeah. So there is this perception gap, if you will, between the way the rest of Europe, particularly Southern Europe, sees the issue vis-a-vis Germany and the way Germany itself
But they had a chance. I mean, by entering the Eurozone, these governments, especially Greece, got very cheap money on the European market, because the European community, i.e. the Eurobond countries, Euro countries, were crediting them. But so they didn't use the chances. They got it that they could finance their the money credit state needed, and they didn't put it into infrastructure, then it consumed it.
Well, yeah, I want to talk just briefly about this whole discussion that led up to this, because Germany has been so seriously criticized for dragging its feet in the perception of many on this issue. Chancellor Merkel has taken a beating in the press, also within the national press, for perhaps not showing enough leadership on this issue. Isn't it normal in a democratic process, in a parliamentary democracy, that there would be a great deal of controversy about this, and that when other countries within the Eurozone, the other 16 members of the Eurozone, look to Germany and see, okay, this bill is going to pass through Parliament, it's pretty clear that it has enough support among the opposition, if not within the government itself, shouldn't they be reassured by that in some way?
I think they should. I mean, what will the 29th of September vote show is that there's basically a large pro-European and pro-Euro majority in this country, and that, as we have been seeing precisely with the last elections, that the Liberals have been confronting with the fact that Euro populism doesn't sell. I mean, they have been more or less openly arguing against the EFSF and against the Euro in this way, and they didn't take the votes. So I think this can make somebody confident about Germany and that this country holds a consensus about what it wants to do, and I think we need to just make sure that the discussion doesn't go under certain red lines, which is basically Germany is European, and then we discuss which solution is the most appropriate solution in this setting.
There's a lot of larger issues about Germany's relationship to Europe wrapped up in this whole discussion. Now, you might think that what's good for Europe is good for Germany, as we've been talking about, but there is a great deal of skepticism about this particular European Rescue Fund that's being debated and is up for a vote next Thursday here in Germany. It's got to be approved by all of the European zone member country governments. So there is some controversy about this. But now one particular man has come out and made a statement to the German Budget Committee over the past week that has he delivered a statement that was particularly poignant for Chancellor Merkel. Let's listen.
Speaking before the Bundestag's Budget Committee, Bundesbank President Jens Weidmann openly criticized the German government's plan to expand the Eurozone Rescue Fund. The former advisor to Chancellor Merkel fears the move may weaken the incentive for heavily indebted countries to push through tough austerity measures. Instead, Weidmann wants it to be made clear that those who fail to tighten their belt will receive no more money from the Rescue Fund, period. While he avoids using the word insolvency, Weidmann warns that it will certainly be a fairly unpleasant scenario, not only for Greece, but for everyone else involved.
A fairly unpleasant scenario. That's a very diplomatic way of summing it up. Ulrike, Hermann, those statements from the Bundesbank president to the Bundestag Budget Committee, what impact do you think that will have on the parliamentarians?
Not much, I think, because the problem is that Jens Weidmann didn't suggest what else was there to do. I mean, all he does is to say what he doesn't want. He says he doesn't want Eurobonds, he doesn't want to have an enlarged rescue fund, he doesn't want that the ECB buys up government bonds to stabilize the spreads. So what does he want? The only idea he has is austerity programs. Now, the problem is that exactly these austerity programs don't work. You can see that with Greece. I mean, what the Greeks really did was to somehow cut down all expenditure. Now, what happened? The economy there shrinks by 12% when you look at the last 3 years. And the deficit is mounting instead of decreasing, despite these austerity measures. So if Weidmann has nothing else to offer but to say, well, we need austerity programs, then he will have no impact at all. And I think, but that is a problem because, you would expect the most important German banker to have some more ideas. And in a way, it shows how desperate the situation is among the economists in Germany. We really do not have economists over here that have that somehow can argue on an international level. They are very provincial, have no ideas, and I think most Europeans just wonder what happens to Germany that they send such people into such important
May I criticize
offices.
this?
Yeah.
We are talking about stately employed government bankers. Well, I do think there are quite a lot of capable international bankers, but they are not paid by 150,000 euros. They work for 2, 3, 4, 5 million in the big international banks. Okay. And just a second.
But there are hardly any Germans among them.
All due respect to the dismal science. Yes.
It is maybe, I think I have to agree, the financial sector in the government and the expertise is not sort of widespread and brilliant, but there are people, but they don't work for the government.
I think Ulrike has a point that Germany is basically making the crisis management of the whole crisis with extremely few people, because we have seen stark withdrawals from ECB, and then you need to send Asmussen, who is the assistant to Schäuble. So it's as
you're
if,
talking about the outgoing and the incoming chief economists of the European Central Bank.
And what I'm saying is that the personal resources of Germany to have high-end finance people is for what we are, a big country, G2 country, big economy or so, is rather low. And then I also think that Mrs. Herrmann is right in saying that there's something like an asymmetry of paradigms, which is that there is a certain paradigm of what monetary policy should be in Germany, which does not match sort of international standings of how monetary policy need to have a fiscal component, yes or no, exactly, right? Yeah. So you have a sort of European/American transatlantic consensus, even Japanese-American-European consensus, that fiscal policy need to go along with monetary policy, which is the flaw of monetary union in the first place, and we all knew this since '92. But there's a German sort of counter-philosophy, which is stability only, austerity only, and that I think is also the fact why Mr. Weber didn't go to ECB in the first place and why Mr. Stark is now resigning, because this philosophy is now marginalized in the thinking.
Well, you've touched on a very sensitive issue for Chancellor Merkel herself. We saw during the summit between Chancellor Merkel and French President Nicolas Sarkozy, where they both came out a few weeks ago and said, what we need is stronger fiscal and economic coordination of policy within the Eurozone countries. And all economists, I think really all, have acknowledged that this is a fundamental flaw in currency union, that you're essentially coming up with a common currency before you're putting the groundwork in for coordinating the underlying fundamentals. So that, I mean, there is this question. Now, Chancellor Merkel herself is actually advocating this closer fiscal and economic union. Do you think that's going to happen?
I think it is going to happen.
Is there a movement within Europe to support that? Because there is political will. Yeah. I've been reading different economists on this who suggest that there simply is not enough political will.
It's probably a slow process, but I would bet it's going to come. It's actually coming, because we have seen a very vivid discussion in Germany over the past weeks. You have been also seeing a discussion about the political component of it, because you would need to design not only Eurobonds, but also the politics of Eurobonds. You know, if you do Eurobonds, that you do a mutualization of debt, and then you also need to reconstruct the system that you don't lose the democratic legitimacy in the process. And I think all this is coming. We have been having Trichet in the Karlspreis discourse, where he requested the European Treasury. We have been having Gerhard Schröder, former German Chancellor, with the same request. So you have this request and this thinking in the political landscape in Germany. One little footnote, but in '92, when we did Maastricht, we did one intergovernmental conference on political union and one on the monetary union. We achieved only monetary union. It was the German quest by that time already that you need political union around. We missed it in '92. I think we are building it now.
Well,
do you think that this particular debate is going to push Europe closer to this sort of coordinated governance on
I would
economic
hope so. I would hope so. I'm not sure. Leading economists have counterbalanced in the edition of a main newspaper on Saturday morning all the policies and saying this is what the government does here. What also leading economic professors of this country? Weizsäcker and a lot of others. We're not, it's no fun reading all the 6 or 7 names with that. It's not like pinpointing this as the bad guy, he doesn't understand it. I would be careful of saying people don't understand it. They say that their heat shows their dangerous lines, and because these dangerous lines are reflected the public feeling here. So, and that is happening in other countries as well. And I do think, Terry just said, that political obstructions or less objections against a common financial and economic policy in Brussels are still existing, and they're not yet overcome.
Let's take a minute and look at another scenario. It looks like the bill to enhance this European financial stability facility to get that in place is going to pass through the German Parliament with or without a full government majority, but the opposition has agreed to support it. So it's pretty clear that it's going to pass the German Parliament. It's not clear everywhere else in the Eurozone.
Slovakia is accustomed to crisis. With a population of 5.5 million, the country has managed to pull itself out of 2 serious economic crises in the past few years. It succeeded with a combination of austerity measures and both economic and tax reforms that have helped attract foreign investment. No help came from the EU. 2 years ago, Slovakia introduced the euro, and now the country is expected to bail out its heavily indebted Eurozone partners. Its contribution, 7.7 billion euros. Prime Minister Iveta Radičová is prepared to pay, but she's virtually alone with her position. Her coalition partner Richard Sulík is leading the charge against the Eurozone rescue plan. He's demanding that Greece be allowed to go bankrupt. Most members of Slovakia's parliament agree.
Ulrike, Guérot, could Slovakia end up scuppering the whole Eurozone rescue package deal?
Yes, they could, but I don't think they will, and I don't think they should. And I think actually that the coalition government in Slovakia has a decent feeling that it should not be Slovakia that screws up the euro and the Eurozone neither. So I think there's responsibility in this country and it won't happen.
You think Slovakia regrets having introduced the euro?
No, I don't think.
Because they were doing actually quite well before they introduced the euro. Now they're facing this rather unattractive, unpleasant situation.
Well, I think we are all in an unpleasant situation, right? And there is also a notion of solidarity that should run through Europe or that doesn't run. We have the same case in Finland, where the Finns are also requesting some special guarantees, which is also sort of skipping out of this solidarity scheme. But I think the discussion will go along that we are all in the same boat. So we save this together and we move out together out of this crisis, but then nobody can have special claims here. And I think this conviction will also go into Finland and into Slovakia.
Ulrike, could this crisis that we're seeing now possibly deter other members of the European Union from wanting to join the Eurozone?
It might. I think especially the Polish really reconsider whether they should join the euro. But on the other hand, you can see what's happening in Switzerland. I mean, the Swiss, are not part of the EU, and they never wanted to have the euro. But right now, they really have problems to stabilize their currency because it's appreciating much too fast. And what the Swiss see is that it is hardly possible to survive in a globalized financial market as a small country. And I think this realization will, in the end, make all European partners join, even those who are not yet in the EU.
Yeah, there are quite a few scenarios being talked about here. There's talk of possibly countries that might have wanted to join the euro now having second thoughts. There's talks of a two-speed Europe, particularly within the eurozone. Could that become the avant-garde in Europe or not? When we look to the other 16 members of the Eurozone outside of Germany, Friedrich, Thelen, do you sense also a strong reluctance to go along with this rescue package?
I would say they are like in the Greek Areopag 2,000 years ago. They're sitting around looking what is happening down there. If the European community does come out, I mean the Euro community gets out of it, unshaven, let's say more or less surviving, and then when the euro has definitely free trade in Europe, it's an avant-garde system. By the way, they're not all populist. Some of the people leading these countries think about the fact that if they're not in the European economic sort of entity, what would they be in the world with Brazil, China, India, even a bit weak Russia and the United States and Japan? Europe is a must, but it must be reorganized, it must be disciplined. This is sort of the message. I think that's the lyric they all dream or think or maybe reflect.
How do you see this playing out, Ulrike, Guérot?
Well, I think there is this reason for two-speed Europe now, which also Mr. Schäuble has mentioned recently, and German finance minister. And going back to '92, I happened to work in the CDU at this time. There was this very famous Schäuble-Lammers paper that already in '94 was calling for a political union of those countries who enter the euro. So just again, it's déjà vu. The idea is not new. We knew it in '94, and we are now doing it. And everything we have been seeing since 18 months, when we went from one European summit to the other, is basically that we have been deepening fiscal integration, economic coordination, and so on and so forth. I think we will need further steps. One step is going into Eurobonds. I think then we will need to shape the politics of Eurobonds, because the moment you get into mutualization of debt, you need a different structure of legitimacy in the European system. And I think these steps are ahead of us, and hopefully we will master them.
Interesting week coming up on this issue in Germany on Thursday. The Bundestag votes on the European Rescue Fund extensions. Chancellor Merkel is going to be hosting Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou just 2 days before for dinner and talks in Berlin. What do you think the Greek and German leaders are going to be talking about? What do you think Chancellor Merkel will tell Greece?
Well, I mean, she can tell Papandreou that, of course, the German Bundestag will vote for this enlarged rescue fund because, as you said, the majority is there. It's not necessarily the majority of the government, but the majority in the parliament, because the opposition already said that that they would support this package. And the other thing I think those two leaders will discuss is that the Greeks do not want to have any kind of haircut before the second rescue package for Greece is agreed on.
Haircut meaning cutting the
debts. The Greeks, they really want to...
Forgiving the debt.
They want to have this second rescue package first that gives them another 109 billion euro. And only after this package was agreed on in Europe, they would agree on talking about a haircut.
So we're talking about a lifeline for Greece, if nothing else. Finally, we only have a minute left. Very quickly, is Europe's credibility on the line with this?
Well, yes, I think Europe will survive.
Friedrich?
Well, this European half-continent has gone through so many crises. I think it's one of the heaviest they ever seen, but I think they will survive it. There's no solution. They want to break up into pieces.
It's going stronger out of this crisis.
Exactly.
Stronger, weaker, we'll have to see. Ulrike, Guérot, Ulrike Hellmann, and Friedrich Thelen, thank you for being with us. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Do check us out on the internet at dwworld.de, and join us again next week.